With a couple of oak stair treads and some various black iron pipe fittings, we're going to make a modern industrial shelf that hangs on the wall. Now this is probably a pretty simple project, but the end result promises to be very rewarding. Why don't you come along with me and let's get started. This shelf is in my friend's kitchen, but it's not big enough for him. He wants me to build a shelf that matches it, that hangs on the wall above it. We're going to use some oak stair treads for our shelf. Now you've seen me use these before. They make great project boards. They're fairly inexpensive, and also they're plentiful for me because I get the rejects from work. After cutting them to length, we're going to rip the bull nose off the front of each one. Now we're going to clean up the edges over at our joiner. This removes any saw marks and squares them up. Next, a little light sanding. Now when it comes to the point where we have to hang this shelf on the wall, we're going to use a couple of angle brackets that mount behind the top level. The problem is if you mount them on the edge of the shelf, it'll make it stick out from the wall unless there's notches for them. Well, I don't know where the studs are going to fall along this top shelf, so instead of just notching out for just each angle bracket, I'm notching out most of the back shelf. That way, no matter where the studs fall, the two angle brackets will fall within this notch. This stain was chosen because it most closely matches the color of our existing shelf. After the stains dry, we're going to put several coats of clear gloss, water-based polyurethane. Now to attach our pipe flanges, we're going to use some zinc wood screws. The only problem is their shininess does not match our pipe flange. But fortunately, we have some paint that does, and we're going to paint the screws and our future hanging brackets here with this paint. Now you can see the difference, a lot closer match. Before assembly, we're using some brake parts cleaner to clean all the grease off of the parts. Now all of our spacing front to back is dependent on this measurement here, which is on the very top shelf. First I flushed it up to one side and measured the difference, and then split that and made a jig. And so with this jig I can get it perfectly centered on the top shelf. This process is the same process we're going to use to assemble the complete shelf. What I do is, using my guide, I mark everything with the self-centering drill bit through the flange. Once I do that, I use a regular drill bit to drill down a pilot hole. I've got a piece of tape on the bit to make sure that I don't drill too deep and go through the other side. It acts as a guide to tell me when to stop. And then I just screw the flange down with our screws. And then we just keep repeating it. After that's done, we flip our top shelf over and we start attaching the pipes that go between the shelf levels, using our layout guide and the same methods we did before. As we're working our way through this, we have to make sure that the back of the shelves line up flush with each other, because as it's hanging on the wall, it needs to be tight against the wall at every level on every shelf. You can see I've got a level laying across the top to help me ensure that everything lines up. And here we have the finished product. I really do like how this turned out. I think it's a really cool looking shelf. I like the way that the oak and the black iron pipe work together. It really does give it kind of an industrial modern look, but yet you have that classic look of the oak. It's really pretty. And here it is hanging on my friend's kitchen wall. You can see as we zoom in up underneath the top shelf those brackets that fit in the notch in the back. You see how one is all the way to the end and one is there because of the studs. So that worked out good with that long notch. Now here's the original shelf we were trying to match. This is the second time in this video I've shown you this shelf, and I'm about to show it to you a third time right here. Yet in a few seconds in my outro Andy's going to act like you've never seen it before. Just play along with him, he doesn't know any better. Well, I'm pleased with how our shelf turned out. Now, my friend has a similar shelf to this that he purchased that is a freestanding unit that sits on the floor in his kitchen. It's a little deeper than this shelf, but it's made of the same construction. Now, it wasn't big enough to hold everything that he needed it to hold, so he asked me if I could build a wall-mounted shelf that would be similar to the one on the floor, one that might look like it was part of a set. And I think we accomplished that fact right here. This looks like the other shelf. In fact, I don't know that anybody would know that it wasn't part of a set. Now, this was a really simple project in theory. In the end, it turned out to be a little bit tougher than I had anticipated. The part about getting the shelves parallel to each other. They all need to be perfectly lined up on the back edge and on the sides, because as it hangs against the wall, you don't want one shelf protruding off the wall. You want them all to be hanging flush with the wall. Now, that is easy to change the geometry of this thing if you're separating pipes and flanges between the shelves aren't exactly the same length. And I found that out the hard way. As I was assembling it, it looked like it was going together, but then when you put a straight edge on it, you noticed that the shelves weren't lined up. So after a little bit of tweaking and finessing, we were able to get it looking like it does, and I'm pleased with the result. I'm pleased also that you came along with me on this journey and stayed to the end of this video. If you haven't checked it out yet, check out my website, thetennesseetinkerer.com. Check me out on Instagram as well. Drop me a line, leave me a message, send me an email on my website. I'd like to get to converse with you a little bit. So, well, I guess stay tuned for the next video. And until next time, thanks for watching.